This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome to Speak Up, Effective Communication. I'm your host, Craig O'Neill. Joining me today, we have a special guest who I'm very excited to bring on the show, Chris Cloutier. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I'm excited. Speak up. I'm ready to speak up.
I'm glad. And I think today's topic is going to be a good one. We're talking about feedback and evaluation, giving feedback. It's one of the most uncomfortable areas of communication that, well, it becomes necessary on a regular basis.
Very necessary, Craig. And we've become a passive world, unfortunately, passive aggressive with our phones. We avoid feedback because we avoid the uncomfortable situations that feedback could create. And a lot of times we live in our head. We play these things out before we actually understand what the feedback might or might not do.
Right. And it's an obviously uncomfortable thing. And I think our listeners can agree. At times, we've all been recipients of crushing feedback. We've probably all fallen short at delivering constructive feedback too. But hey, the discomfort and anxiety around this topic is probably fueled a lot, I think this is fair to say, by our past experiences, usually on the receiving end.
Absolutely. Let me come out of the gate with, I always ask people, was Michael Jordan's high school coach, was he a good person or a bad person for giving Michael Jordan that feedback enough to say, hey, you're not good enough. You actually are talented, but you're not good enough to make it on the varsity team. You're going to have to stay on JV. If he wouldn't have said that, Craig, we wouldn't know the Michael Jordan we know now, because apparently he went home and worked every day because he was so dejected from what that coach said. So is that coach a great coach, or is that coach a really bad a-hole coach? Maybe a little of both. But we don't think about that, right? Sometimes the feedback we give actually could energize somebody. How many times in your life, Craig, have you been told you can't do that? And you're like, oh, just watch me.
I think that is spot on. And hey, folks, this conversation is brought to you by our sponsors. We want to thank them very much for bringing us the ability to have these conversations. Let's hear from our sponsors, and then let's go into this talk. Looking to take your shop to the next level of quality service, team culture, and overall profitability? At the Institute, we provide personalized coaching that aligns with your goals of financial stability, excellent customer service, and employee satisfaction. Our priority is helping you establish significant and sustainable progress. We work with you to create strategies that reduce the stress of running your business, improve your quality and performance, and optimize your profitability. Experience the benefits of professional coaching by visiting wearetheinstitute.com/business-assessment. Hey friends, as you know, I'm a proud member of the AutoFlow team, and let me tell you, we've changed how business is done for auto shops everywhere. We support your client experience before, during, and after the work is done. Imagine this: timely updates sent directly to your clients, branded digital vehicle inspections, and seamless communication from start to finish. That's why shops love AutoFlow. And hey, with those 5-star reviews rolling in, you'll wonder how you ever managed without us. Take an important next step and take your auto shop to the next level. Visit www.autoflow.com. Get on board with an AutoFlow trial. Are you ready to meet your perfect auto repair shop management software partner? Well, say farewell to the days of transactional relationships and hello to a true partnership that elevates your business. The #1 all-in-one solution is AutoLeap. You're not just getting software, you're gaining a dedicated ally committed to your success. AutoLeap will help you sell more, save time, and delight your customers at every turn. From scheduling appointments to creating estimates, generating invoices, managing technicians, and seamlessly syncing with QuickBooks to keep your records updated. Experience the difference a true partnership makes. Visit Autoleap.com and book a demo today. Autoleap, your trusted partner for success. All right, we're here with Chris Cloutier, and we are talking feedback. And I think that, yes, Chris, you're absolutely right. This is an uncomfortable thing many times. The guy giving the feedback can probably be construed as that jerk sometimes. I think that's the fear. I think you've
Absolutely.
overcome that fear. I think you give great feedback. I think you give ridiculously good feedback. And I'm not just saying this because, hey, Chris, you're my boss at Autoflow. You're a sponsor of this podcast. We'll get those two
Absolutely.
things out of the way.
Yes. Yes.
I am a recipient of Chris feedback. I'm also a colleague and network connection for many other people who have been recipients of Chris feedback and a member of the Toastmaster clubs where I watch you give feedback and evaluation. Everyone I know who's been on the receiving end of this has this to say, and this is a behind your back comment that I'm going to let you know right now. Chris gives really good feedback.
Sometimes it hurts, Craig. Sometimes I absolutely am a jerk. And I got to thread this needle very carefully. My mother is actually very good at giving feedback. And from a very early age, she was very brutally honest to me and my other 5 siblings. Very brutally honest. She would write us notes. She would write us little things here and there that were pretty honest. And then if you had a conversation with her, she would give it to you like sometimes you didn't want to hear what she had to say, but it was always truthful. And you know what? One thing as I grew up, I understood is people might not have always liked my mother. She's still alive, thank God, but they respected her. Everybody respected her because they said, you know, one thing about your mom, she's one of those cut and dry kind of people. She'll give you the truth when you ask for it. And I think there's a lot. And so I've taken a lot of what my mom has shown me over the years and said, you know what? We all want to be liked, Craig. We all want to be liked. I do want to be liked. But as a boss, as a leader, as somebody who's trying to get people to go and influence them to move in the same direction, feedback becomes critical. And truthful, honest, hard feedback becomes crucial.
Yes. I would say that your mom sounds very candid.
Very candid. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
And you can use a couple descriptive words with that my mom's been called, which I'm sure I've been called too. But let's call it candid, Craig. I like that.
Yeah. Chris, you are very candid. I was talking with you beforehand, and the term I've used that sometimes the feedback can give people heartburn. But and jokingly, I'll say this to you here too. I think you've gotten okay with the fact that sometimes it gives people heartburn.
I have made many of people cry, Craig, including family members, daughters, wife, employees. Craig, you're an employee. I'm not saying I've made you cry, but I've certainly upset you. And you're not the only one that I've set with my feedback. Yeah. And it's funny if they're like, all right, God, I wonder how Chris's home life is. Well, it's actually good. But there are those moments when, yes, I'm given some feedback that they're like, wow, Dad, could you knock some edges off that and sweeten it up? And, you know, we'll talk about delivery of feedback. And sometimes I am a little too brutally honest. And sometimes if I can get in the right mindset, Craig, I don't want to railroad somebody. I don't want to just bulldoze them. I want to give it to them in the way that they're going to receive it really well and potentially do something with it. And as we talk about this, sometimes when we give feedback, and I think when we give it, we're afraid of how we deliver. And so a lot of times we won't even give it. Whereas my theory is, no, let's give it and let's try and improve on the method of the way we give it in the future. Because I think we're still better when we're transparent with other people, we're candid with other people versus saying, you know, I'm not going to say that because I might not say it right.
Right. And that I think is exactly what people do. I think that it isn't even necessarily the fear of saying it right sometimes. It's the fear of what happens to the relationship if you give the feedback at all.
The repercussions, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that goes into the question. One of the questions I want to ask you too is like, what the authority to give feedback seems to be a question that comes up a lot, especially in Toastmasters. We mention Toastmasters all the time here. And I see this with guests that are asked to do even a simple grow and glow for one of the speakers. And like, who the heck am I to give someone else who's been doing this longer any kind of something they could improve on?
Craig, I love it. And Toastmasters is an environment where the whole point is feedback. Give a speech based off of parameters. Somebody gives you feedback on whether or not you did it properly or not. And Craig, without fail, just like you said, new people and people who just get into Toastmasters, it is without fail that they are afraid to give that candid feedback. They will say, even though a person is going, I forgot what, I just wrote this speech 10 minutes ago. And then after the speech is done and the person's giving them feedback, they'll be like, man, it was a really good speech. I couldn't find anything.
Yes.
But somebody like me or you were like, hold on. And, we have 10 things and we're not being mean about it. We're being nice about it. That environment is, once again, a place where people are more receptive to receive it. I think the role, honestly, and I think depending on where you are in your company, I've seen when I worked in corporate America, somebody who was, very low on the totem pole, try and pull the CTO aside and tell him how he needs to run IT. Probably not the kind of feedback you need to be given the CTO. I think there's the people around you, the people who are influenced by you, and the people you are influenced by. I think that absolutely those are the people that we should be getting feedback from and giving feedback to, including colleagues and peers. But Craig, you've done the same thing. You've been at shows. We've seen speakers. I have a bunch of notes to give them. And I want to go, hey, you can improve your speech by just doing this. And you know what, Craig? I don't give it to them. A lot of times I won't give them to them because I don't have that relationship to where if I did give it to them, like it would crush them. But an employee-employer relationship, me being a leader, you being, one of my main people. Yeah, our relationship is should be a relationship where we can give feedback candidly to each other.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. The scenario of someone else at a conference, our friends and colleagues that are giving presentations even on a regular basis, it's awkward then, right? If you saw something that can improve, but you don't necessarily want to do it, say, hey, great job. That's always nice. And truly it is great. And you'll see the feedback all over the place. I guess one of the things I always do is, do you want any feedback?
Correct. Great question to ask. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Or if they asked you before, I think the more that people see us and the more we present out in the industry about public speaking and the more I do get asked that too. And I'm like, okay, but sometimes, Craig, even at that, depending on the level of relationship I have with them, once again, don't want to necessarily crush them. There's friends I have that I won't give feedback. I think in business world, and once again, employee-employer relationships, I think a lot of shop owners, they're afraid to give their key people feedback because they're afraid that they're going to run them off versus, or if you're a coach and that as a business owner, you are a coach. As an entrepreneur, you are a coach. Once again, you can't make anybody make a decision, but what you can do is influence people, right? And you can influence them to see what you want to see and move in the direction you want to move, right? Interesting dynamics when it does come to feedback. And that's a great question. Would you like feedback?
Well, and I think as employees is still a fair question as well. I always try to do this. And I think you've seen me do this too. I've always tried to be the kind of person that expresses that I want feedback. I've always tried to be the kind of person that expresses that I want feedback and I want it candidly. Yes. If you have a guy on your team that's expressing that, that's an open door. And I think that's establishing a framework for a healthy relationship between a mentor and a mentee. And I think to our relationship, that was an important variable that opens the door to be a recipient for the feedback that I know has happened to shape my life in many, many, many positive directions. What do you do though, if you have someone who is very much not open to feedback or would push back against that? And you run multiple repair shops in addition to the software company, and you meet lots of different people that are capable of receiving feedback or are uncomfortable with it. How do you gauge that? And what do you do if you have a guy who never wants it or never responds to it?
Yeah, we talk about culture in our organizations a lot and giving and receiving feedback. I liked the comment that you said, and you said, I really opened myself up to feedback. That shows a lot of growth personally to Craig individually. You've heard me say this, like, be your own brand. I always encourage people to be your own brand.
Yep.
Like, listen to other people and what they're saying. Listen to the wind and what it's blowing and what it's telling you. Like, don't be offended when somebody tells you or gives you feedback. And we'll talk about how feedback is a gift, right? Like on Christmas morning, right? I give this speech, Craig, over and over and over and over again. I give it to young people. I give it to old people. I give it to the same age people as me. And I say, on Christmas morning, when you open those gifts, when Aunt Jane gives you old soggy cat chow in a bowl and it's partially eaten, you look at Aunt Jane and you go, thanks, Aunt Jane. And in the back of your mind, you think, yeah, this is going in the trash. And then your child gives you a pair of socks that they're cool, but they have cats on them. And you really don't like cat socks, nor do you like cats. And you're like, thank you, Kylie. I really appreciate the cat socks. In the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to regift this to Aunt Jane because she really likes cats, right? And then your wife gives you an all-exclusive, all-weekend golf outing to one of the greatest golf courses in the world. And you're like, thank you, Amy. And then in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm keeping this. So the problem with feedback is people think if it's given to them, they have to do something with it. Like they
Mhm.
have to receive it. No, it's up to you how you want to deal with the feedback you give. So you've been in situations and I've had people that work for me and they push back when somebody tells them anything. And I'm like, well, hold on, don't push back, receive it, then determine what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Take parts of it, throw away the rest. Maybe it's so good you can regift it to somebody else and you can improve their life. But all this person is trying to do is pour into you some wisdom that they received from some walk of their life or some person in their life. So I always try and open with that type of mindset. And then, Craig, there's some people that you know are really good at their job and you let them be really good at their job. And maybe you don't try and open their mind and expand their mind to what could be. And as long as they do their job, you're like, good job, Craig. You're excellent at turning that wrench, or you're excellent at this particular, task at banging the keyboard or whatever. You're really good at that. Your interpersonal skills, your presentation skills, they're not so good. But I'm not going to sit there and create a bunch of friction when you're completely closed to this idea of, I don't want to grow. And I really
Yeah.
think feedback allows you to grow, right? Because then you're asking people, hey, show me where my blind spots are.
No, I think this is really wise, Chris. And I think this is actually one of the first things that I would say, a great tip from you that our audience should definitely be listening to on why you are capable of giving good feedback. Because the first thing you're aware of is if the feedback is going to be beneficial for the person and their goals. There's obviously what you want for them, but in the shop scenario is, yeah, they're a good wrench. That's exactly what you want. And you're very good with that. Our
Yeah.
relationship is fine. Let's keep that going for as long as we can. We're good.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you're really good at turning wrenches. You should be a manager. Well, I don't want to be a manager. I don't really like people. Okay, well, you should stay good at turning wrenches, right? But what we do is we promote them to their incompetence, right? Is the joke
Mm,
or whatever. But I agree. So when the feedback we do give, to what degree are we wanting to change or open the person's eyes? And then, like you said, to what degree are they receptive to receive the feedback that you're about to give them? One of my core values, Craig, is pouring into other people. I love pouring into other people. I love people being able to realize that there is a potential that they might not be living up to their life. If I could give them pearls of wisdom because people have poured into me, that I will give them the pearls of wisdom and then hopefully they'll grow. I equate it to when I'm pouring water in your glass, are you holding your glass up? Or are you putting your hand over the top of it and water spilling everywhere? If water's spilling everywhere, I don't want to waste my water. I only have so much water to give. It's not endless. So are you receptive to it? And is a relationship going to go for? And once again, if you're not receptive to it and you do a great job at what you do, that feedback might be minimal of what I tell you.
interesting. Yeah. So I feel like we talk about 3C communication from the Dale Carnegie concept of you never complain, criticize, or condemn. Now, unfortunately, I feel like when feedback goes wrong for people, that's usually the point that we're communicating from. That's a common error I see. But you're talking about feedback from a position of really altruism in many regards, but it's an actual interest in seeing that person improve themselves, not because of something you don't like about them, not because it bothers you that this is happening or this or that, but out of a genuine interest in improving their life. Step one.
That is absolutely the core. But then it bleeds over to if you run a business and somebody's not doing something they should be doing, you must give them the feedback, right? And
Yeah.
say, hey, Craig, I told you to lock the door after you leave the shop. And you're like, yeah, boss, I got it. And then you come again the next day and it's not locked. Craig, what's the problem with you locking the door, right? I mean, so
Correct.
there is feedback that can be very painful for their job to make sure that they're
Constructive
hitting or
versus corrective. Constructive feedback
absolutely.
versus corrective feedback. And corrective feedback is certainly something in the employment scenario that you're going to run into. So yeah, very much two different things in that case. And it's not a complaint. It's out of the wellness and the goodness for the business that those sort of corrections need to occur, not a general distaste or dislike or anything else. Although I would distaste and dislike it very much if people left the door unlocked.
Absolutely. And Craig, you say this, right? We don't want to hurt other people whenever we have this conversation, right? A lot of times when you give feedback or you give some sort of criticism and it can go in the wrong places, it can go and take bad turns.
Sure.
It can go bad places. And once again, going back to our earlier conversation, a lot of times people won't give feedback because they're afraid that it's going to go to the wrong place. If you're the one giving the feedback, you have to realize, and sometimes be okay with the fact that it just might go wrong. It's the human experience. We're all experiencing it. We're all experiencing this in real time. There is no right or wrong experience for you. Your experience is different from my experience. We're human beings. It's an active thing that we're doing. I think the worst thing we can do is get in our own head and say, you know what, if Craig's really great, but if I give him this feedback, I'm probably going to hurt his feelings. He's not going to like me anymore. He's not going to work for me anymore. Versus, hey, Craig, how about this? Here, open your mind to this, some of these suggestions I've given you, some of these things I've given you. Once again, you've changed your mindset over the years to be more receptive to this idea of personal growth. Man, Carm, everybody on Carm's show, all the people you're going to have on your show are going to talk about their personal growth journeys. But then really, who's really taking that journey? Who's really asking for feedback? Who's really looking for feedback? Because I know a lot of people are like, totally on the journey, man. I'm on the journey with you. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna give you a little bit of feedback. No, I'm good. My journey's, man, it's locked and loaded. I didn't know exactly what to do. And I'm like, dude, you're heading off a cliff. No, I'm good, Chris. No, don't give me any feedback. And I'm like, part of the journey is being self-aware, and part of being self-aware is taking feedback from others. Once again, you don't have to integrate all the feedback into your own being. You just have to receive it, listen to it, hear it. There might be some truths in there.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned this in the onset here too, that we live in a society now that's become very passive on this point. It is easier to bury our heads. And like you mentioned, the cell phones is a distraction, something to distract us from various things. But that point that you made, that growth comes from friction, I think is the part. It's from discomfort. The discomfort is inherent in the process of giving feedback. It is inherent in that. And that is where the growth occurs. We talked about the book, The Comfort Crisis, is one I keep on recommending to just about everybody I meet right now. And it's absolutely wonderful. These cell phone things have existed for like 0.03% of our time on this planet, and they are changing us. That's just one thing. And you mentioned kids. You mentioned sometimes the kids cry when you give them feedback. I have teenagers. You have girls are very similar age to my girls. And boy, it makes you feel rotten. Sometimes it's just a horrible feeling to have to give feedback that's hurting someone's feelings. I can't stand it. It's the worst feeling in the world. It's as bad as going to the pediatrician with the kids when they're babies and you have to see them get a shot, even though you know it's better for them. It's just the worst.
Absolutely. The friction has to be a part of our life, and we know that, but we're so afraid of growth and friction. We just want these perfect lives. They don't exist. Everything is friction, right? You want to be rich, you're going to have problems. You want to be poor, you're going to have problems. You want to be fat, you're going to have problems. You want to be healthy, you're going to have problems. Like, choose your hard, right? It's the choose your hard.
Yes.
You want to, and I equate it to this, right? The friction muscle, right? When you build muscle, I go to the gym, you go to the gym, you ruck, right?
Yep.
There is pain in rucking. There is pain in lifting weights. But in order to grow your physique and your muscle, you must have that friction, work it out, tear it down so it rebuilds stronger and better, right? When you start rucking, man, Craig, you were rucking, half a mile. I'm just kidding. You're rucking a couple miles. Now, dude, you're rucking like 15 miles. You're like, not even breaking a sweat. I remember when I rucked with you back in December, I couldn't keep up with you, Craig. I'm a healthy guy and you're rucking so dang fast. I'm like, but this comes over time because all the friction you've created.
Yep. So that's the point, isn't it? It is the consistency of being in a spot where you're learning to give good and better feedback. You mentioned Toastmasters. We mention Toastmasters all the time. This is such a great format for that, because that is so built into every single meeting, where it's just it becomes like a muscle that you develop to give someone a grow and a glow, a critique and something that they work on, and you can sandwich it out. There's a lot of different strategies. We discuss it in our class, our Speak Up class that we deliver on this. And that's one of my favorite portions of the class, where we even have people come up onto the stage. We have someone who's never given an evaluation of that speech, evaluate that speech later, and to see how that goes. And my favorite point is usually at that end of that evaluation, where we often get someone will say, oh, that was a great speech. I loved how you did this. I loved how you did that. And they might pick a couple things apart, but then you come in and say, hey, that was great. And you evaluate the evaluator. Literally evaluating the evaluator. And then what the experience is for the people observing this is always the same. They hear you give your evaluation of it, and it's like, Oh yeah, I did see that. Oh, that is good advice for this person. You actually watch those evaluations in that setting, and a Toastmasters meeting can provide this for you. And you have something that you can start to replicate on your own. You see it doesn't kill the guy on the stage.
Right. And I'll tell you this too, Craig, it allows that person to start giving feedback, but the person who's receiving it starts working that muscle and opening up their mind a
Yes.
little
Oh,
bit
yes.
more, right? Because how many times a week are we going, "Hey, Craig, could you give me feedback? Hey, Amy, my wife, could you give me feedback? Hey, Kylie, Christian, could you give me feedback?" We're not asking for it as adults. I think one of the
No.
biggest mistakes we make, right? And me and you talk about this in our classes all the time. One of the biggest mistakes we make as adults, and we show our kids this, is like we're infallible. We don't try new things. Like we know everything. We're omnipotent. And so when you're a kid, you're like, crap, if I screw up, if I make a mistake, if I like, oh my God, like my parents don't make mistakes. So if I make a mistake, like I'm horrible. So we're not looking actively seeking it. So I think even on that other side, Toastmasters starts opening your mind to,
Yeah.
oh, wow. Craig, even now when I go to Toastmasters, somebody gives me feedback, and it's been a while since I've given a speech, but you give me feedback. I've had other people give me feedback. And every once in a while, I'm like, oh, crap. I didn't know I was doing that again.
It's all the time.
Talking like Craig, I used to be, and you had the same problem that I had, and it was talking fast. Like I'd get up, I'd give a presentation, and sometimes
Yeah.
and I'm on Carm's show, and if I get super excited, I start talking really fast, and I'm like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
every once in a while, people will be like, "Hey, slow down, Speed Racer."
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that was my day today too, Chris. I have
Yeah,
back-to-back meetings all day, and
yeah,
Craig talks real fast because he's got to get it in. I'm like,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
I tell this story too to some people. Like, I'll tell you, I want to receive good feedback, but I tell you that to look tough. I don't want critical feedback. I want you to tell me how
Right.
awesome I am at
Yes.
what I'm doing.
Yes. Yes. And Craig, it is important to give that positive feedback as well. We're not just
Sure.
talking critical criticisms.
Yes.
This is kind of revolved around the harder feedback,
You're
but we
right.
should absolutely celebrate those wins when our people win. We should give them the great feedback whenever they do. I mean, Craig's got a radio show. I mean, how excited the team was when you said, "Hey, I got I'm on Carm's network." Like everybody's like, "Yeah, you totally deserve this. Like this is awesome that you have this." And that does help you and raise you and give you the confidence. That way, when Chris comes back and says, "Hey, Craig, this episode wasn't very good," and Carm says, "Well, this episode," and Tracy's like, "Craig, you had 17 ums
Oh man.
I had to cut out. I was like, Craig, you made me work all night to clean this up. What is wrong with you?" Like, you're going to get that, right? That's coming,
Yeah.
but everybody's super excited right now, right? So it's good to get that
Yeah, it is
positive
awesome.
feedback.
Oh, it's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey. Life is a journey, man. Ups and downs, jagged roads. I'm reading another good book, Craig. It's called The Messy Middle. And this was given to me by another owner. And it's absolutely about startup companies and companies in general. The beginning of the story is told, and it's always glorious. And then the end of the story is told, and it's always glorious. And the middle is kind of this sweet line. But what really happens in the middle is death, right? Like everything that's wrong happens in the middle. But once again, or you read a book, and yeah, there's some interesting things in the middle, but the start's like, and then the finish is like fantastic. And this talks about just this messy middle that we get into. And it's comforting because as an entrepreneur, as a shop owner, business owner, I get caught up a lot in, damn, this other guy's doing so good. He just finished his race. And here I am stuck in this, sometimes horrible, what feels like endless loop of just destruction. And that's not true, right? But this is like 5 minutes, and the next 5 minutes, I'm happy. But it's interesting because it talks about this messy middle. Our life is messy. It's a messy middle. That's what we got. We're born. It's great. Everybody is like, "Hey, we're happy Craig's here." We die. Everybody celebrates, your death and all that. And the middle of our lives are just, God, they're constant ups and downs and messy. It's
Yeah,
very
you're
good
right.
book.
No,
Excellent book.
it sounds like the story of Tracy's life as a producer of all these episodes for all the different shows too, because I think
Yes.
she keeps a file, I'm
She
pretty
is
sure,
the
of all the
messy
stuff she
middle.
cuts out.
Yes. Yes,
She
she
she's
is. Yeah,
no.
you guys have fun with the beginning product, and then she puts out the end product, and it's the messy middle that she's dealing with, right?
You
Everybody
should
sees the
see
end
the
product.
outtakes.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
they're wonderful.
I'm
No,
sure
that's
they are.
good. But no, Chris, you mentioned as well too, like it isn't always great. It doesn't always go great. There's times where we fall flat when we give feedback, and that happens to us on a regular basis. There's recent cases where we experience and we talk about this. I've shared stories about my own grandfather. He's capable of the best affirmations, like really wonderful stuff. And he's capable of reducing a man to 1 inch tall. Like you wouldn't even have to open the door to walk out of his office after you had one of his butt chewings. and that power exists inside of each and every single one of us to either destroy or to build up. How do we stay on the right one?
Yeah, Craig, and I struggle with it, right? Because I think that I'm a very good judge of character. I know people very well. I know the goods and the positives. Like, man, I love people and I study them all the time. I do. I
Mm,
have, it's a joke. I have folders and files on everybody, and I really do, right? Like, I have notes on everybody, right? Actually,
nice.
I do. I have notes on your kids. I have notes on their names. I have notes on like what your likes are, what your dislikes are. And I do, right? It just helps me to keep track of people and find interest in them.
Just
When
genuine
you're,
curiosity and interest in other people.
genuine
Yeah.
curiosity and interest in other people. But like once again, I was going back to sometimes like man, you want to stay on the positive, you want to stay on, but it's gonna go dark sometimes. It just is, right? And I think we as people have to be okay with it. I think it's like anything we just talked about. The more you practice it, the more you do it, the better are that you get on it, right? And then look, other really good article I was reading, it talked about self-reflection. And it said, super successful people, one of the things they do is they reflect every night about what they did right and wrong. Are you reflecting? Or do you have this ability to reflect? And back when you do have this bad conversation, like I did with one of my employees not too long ago when we were talking about this, and I'm very good at, hey, you missed this deadline, you missed this, you missed, like, look, I keep score. I'm analytical and I'm passionate and I can really make somebody feel really bad. But that wasn't my intention, Craig. My
Right.
intention was to get us on the same page again, to get us communicating again and all this. So as
Hmm.
I'm sitting there and, me and you are texting back and forth, and I'm like, Craig, I'm aware, but when it's in the situation, I'm not. But I think the fact that I can reflect, and you said this, and I appreciated this, that I can look back at a situation and say, I didn't really want it to go that way, and I apologize. And I've done that with you. I've done that with
Yeah.
other people in the organization because I can admit, look,
Mhm.
it got out of hand. Like,
Mhm.
it got out of hand. I got out of hand. And let me be the first one to say,
Yeah.
man, I apologize. Like, there's no pride here. We know this. The conversation is typically not on I hate you conversation, you suck
No.
conversation. It's
No.
usually, hey, we need to communicate better. We need to get on the same page conversation. And then that just goes sideways.
Yeah, competence and warmth are the two variables on that. We've seen good talks on this, and we've mentioned this sort of concept too. Going in from high competence mode into warmth mode, sometimes the balance is there. Other times it's just one or the other. It
It's not
follows up
there.
later
Yep.
on. It can be
You're right.
tough. No,
And
I
I
think
can be
there's
very competent. Yep.
you speak from a position of high competence very naturally.
And then the
It
warmth
is,
sometimes is not there. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
or it will follow it just a
Yeah.
little bit behind that.
We were all laughing, right? When we were watching the Dave Ramsey,
Yes.
entree leaderships, and the one speaker got up and talked about warmth and
Yep.
emojis. And,
Yep.
people are not warm, don't use emojis and smiles, and they rarely use exclamation points. And it's funny, we all went back and looked at our emails and like, you use exclamation points. And Cody, one of our developers, like, nope, there's no
Yeah.
exclamation points anywhere.
There's
There's no emojis anywhere, right? Like,
no, high
yeah,
confidence. Yeah.
yeah,
Vanessa Van Edwards, she has a book called
that's
Cues, and she
very
talks
good.
on this concept. Extraordinary. It's such a great topic.
Another great
Such a
book.
great
Yeah.
topic. Yes.
Great topic, great book.
No, this is a good topic, Christian. We could go on forever on this topic. And what I'll want to do too, we'll have more conversations on this, folks, where we talk about some of the strategy that we have going into delivering excellent feedback. And you can catch this as well in the Remarkable Results Toastmasters Club. We meet on the first and third Thursdays every single month, and it's 2 p.m. on the first Thursday Eastern, and it is 7 p.m. very soon here for today on the third Thursday Eastern time as well. And you're welcome to come free as a guest. Once again, I want to thank our sponsors here. I also want to thank you, Chris, for doing this with me, and thank the listeners as well. This show is for you, and it is here so that you can feel better about moving into uncomfortable areas of communication. Hey, we get it. We've all fallen short. Feedback can be tough. We can destroy people, their livelihoods, or their relationships. But if done well on those occasions when feedback is delivered and received well, wisdom is shared, improvements are made, and lives are changed, possibly for generations. And it's a truly wonderful and deeply fulfilling thing to be a part of. And paradoxically, it's very humbling as well when that is what is accomplished. So,
Amen,
Chris,
Craig.
final words?
Amen. That's it. Amen. That is my final word, brother. Preach it.
It won't be the final
Life-giving.
word, Chris. I hope we get to have you on here again very soon. Thank you, everyone, again for listening. This is Speak Up. Remember, before you speak up, listen up. Appreciate you all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Speak Up, Effective Communication with Craig O'Neill on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Craig on your favorite podcast listening app and on his YouTube channel. Let him know what you'd like him to speak up about. Craig is all for advancing the automotive service aftermarket.